So I work for a biotech company. We sponsor clinical trials. Today, I want to focus on where those clinical trials happen, the sites. I've worked for a top 5 CRO as well as multiple biotech and pharma companies. And in my 25 years of experience, I know that sites are our #1 partner. Without clinical sites, we have no clinical trial participants. Without participants, we have no data. Without data, we have no approvals. And without approvals, we have no new meds, no new drugs. And in my years of working with clinical trial sites, here are 3 facts I've learned firsthand. Number 1, clinical trials are not a profit driver for healthcare facilities. Sites don't make a lot of money. Number 2, sites are operating at just over half strength. Sites don't have time. And number 3, sites are not involved in the selection and testing of the tools that they will use. Sites aren't given a voice. So over the past 3 years, payments, staffing, and technology burden have consistently ranked among the top concerns voiced by our clinical sites, with staffing consistently number 1. So let's talk about payments. Show of hands. How many of us work for free? How many of us get paid every 90 days and often late? Unless you've won the lottery or have generational wealth, not many. Clinical sites work on low margins. According to a recent study, 2% or less and 16% of sites have reported a loss. Sites live paycheck to paycheck. Much of the work sites do isn't even paid for at all. This includes training on systems, monitoring visits, all of which are required but are not included in the site budget. And payments are typically slow, sometimes very slow. 90-day payment standards and payments are late. We've known this for quite some time. None of this is new. But what is new and what is changing is that sites are pushing back and being selective in the clinical trials that they participate in. So the challenge with payments, it only intensifies an even bigger issue. And that is the challenge and burden on site staff and time. Sites are currently working at 60% resource capacity, just over half strength. Exhaustion set in at the height of COVID, and it has not let up. I'm sure all of you have witnessed an overloaded and understaffed medical care facility. I'm sure you've waited weeks or months to even get an appointment. Working at 60% resource capacity does not mean doing half as much. It can mean working twice as hard, and it does mean that you have to be selective in what you take on. Early in my career, everyone was afraid of the sponsor. You heard it on the phone calls, you read it in the emails. Sites did what sponsors said for fear that that next trial would not come. But the dynamic is shifting. Sites do not need sponsors in the same way anymore. Sites care about their patients and their research, but they can be selective. They have to be selective. They can back away from the research and focus on their patients and their practice, which is their primary profit driver. Sponsors now compete for sites' time and attention. The energy has shifted. I can hear it on the phone calls and I can read it in the emails. It is in our best interest to cater to our sites so that they do participate in our clinical trials. And let's also consider this when we add complexity to our trials. New technology and updated systems may have a promise to lessen the burden on clinical sites, But just learning those systems takes time, time that is not paid for. And because sites aren't involved in selecting or testing of the equipment, sponsors may choose a system that doesn't work well in their workflow. Something that took 1 step now takes 5 steps, doubles the amount of time. It's great news that we are improving and enhancing our technology, and we are learning so much from other industries. But what we frequently hear and consistently hear from our sites is technology burden and burnout. We overcomplicate things in our industry for our sites and for our patients. So, what do? We have this great plan to escape out of a fish tank to only end up in isolated fish bags in the ocean. In other words, we know what the issues are. So how do we break down those barriers? So here are 3 things that I think can make things a little bit better. Number 1, pay your sites on time and pay them for the work that they do. This simple act of prompt and adequate payments will build goodwill and trust with your sites for those times where it will be complicated and you need a little extra effort. And for the CFOs and the financial teams, holding on to those payments just a little bit longer is not worth the risk of losing our sites or delaying recruitment. Sponsors, big and small, can do this. And this is something we can do right now. Second, once you complete the easy task of paying your sites on time and for the work that they do, strengthen the relationships with your sites. You can focus on building that relationship. The relationship between a site and sponsor is absolutely critical. Biotech and pharma companies are investing in positions to do just that, focus on the site and the site relationship. A site relationship manager, someone who has the background of a site and understands the day-to-day activities that the sites go through. They review materials and training documents, and they look at it and how it will impact the sites. And then they liaise with the sites to attempt to lessen the burden. So for the bigger kids, the pharma companies that have budget capacity, get yourselves a site relationship manager. And third, let's work together on systems. I reached out to 5 colleagues in the industry and asked them, do you involve sites in selecting or testing of the systems that you use? All of them replied, great idea, but admitted to never doing it. Sponsors and technology companies can involve sites in testing of their platform systems. And sponsors can even take it a step further and include a question in their RFP asking technology companies if they involve sites in their testing. Just imagine if all of us in this room did just that. We asked technology companies if they involve sites in their testing. They would do it. It would take time, but they would do it. So I have something to share that shapes my perspective. So that's me. I'm not just speaking to you as someone that works for a biotech company. I'm speaking to you as a patient and a clinical trial participant. Not just a hair club executive, I'm also a client. In August of 2020, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. 4 of the 5 sisters in my family have been diagnosed. We have participated in multiple clinical trials, and I was one of those people that benefited from the caregiver and added to their workload. Like so many of you, all I want to do is make a difference in the lives of patients and their caregivers, and for their families, our families who want to innovate in medicine. 1, 2. So during my medical battle, the face of clinical research was not the sponsor or the designer of a technology company or the ECOA CEO.
Thank you, everyone. You're amazing people. You really are. You did it, girl. You did it. Thank you. Thank you.
Take a picture with your family.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Together?
Yeah. And I'll get a picture Yeah, here, get into it.
The face of clinical research for my sisters and I was the OR nurse, the infusion team, the scheduler, the clinician. That experience helped me realize that sites are our number one partner. The sites are who the patient sees. So, I'm not standing here with a fancy new system built on machine intelligence, but I do believe we can innovate on good human intelligence. So here are Rosie's 3 tips to become a sponsor of choice. Number 1, pay your sites on time and for the work that they do. Number 2, build a stronger relationship with your sites and ease the burden. And number 3, include the sites in selection and testing of the systems and tools that they are going to use. As the sites take care of the patient's needs, let's take care of the needs of our sites. And as those clinical sites are what the patient sees, let's make sure we see those sites. Thank you.